Welcome to the DG Workshop. I'm glad you could join me today. Today we are creating this thin-walled maple bowl. The first thing we need to do is true up this tenon. The original tenon warped and became oval. The benefits of the diamond point scraper is that it allows me to see when I have a perfect dovetail. This tool's advantage over using a detailed gouge is that you can easily see when you've created a perfect dovetail. However, it's important to only cut with one edge of the tool at a time. Before we go any further, I need to sharpen my 55-degree bowl gouge. I will be using a Tormek today to do this. Here I've removed my bowl gouge from its handle and I'm placing it in the Tormek holder. If purchasing a Tormek for gouge sharpening, you need to buy all the components independently. I'll put those in the description. I'll put a 65mm extension on it, and then I'll set the holder to 4 so that I can create a perfect 55-degree bevel when sharpening. The Tormek has a fine diamond wheel, which is the equivalent to a 600 grit. I've colored the end of the gouge to make it easier to see when I've entirely sharpened it. While the Tormek does a great job putting a fine edge on the tool, it's my responsibility to ensure that the shape of the nose and the wings are correct. Here I'm getting very close to done, but I've decided that the nose has a hook on it, and so I'm going to go back and do a little bit more. Now I'm spending a little time honing the outside to get that perfect edge. I now need to start the process of truing up the bowl, but since my tailstock's in the way, I can't really use a push cut because I can't get in close enough. Instead, I'm going to use some pull cuts to start truing it up. I now want to begin to establish the foot on the bottom of the bowl. I do this with a pull cut, first pivoting the gouge away from me and then back towards me to create an ogee. I've got the handle well lowered and I'm ensuring I'm cutting just with the nose of the gouge, and as I progress onwards, I carefully engage more of the wing. I'm happy to see that the gouge is producing some fine shavings, definitely a sign of a well-sharpened gouge. Now that I've moved away from the bottom of the bowl, I can begin to use push cuts again because the tailstock is not in my way. I've stopped to take a look and I see that there's still some tearout and other spots that remain unturned. I'm taking another push cut here to true up the outside of the bowl. I want to get rid of all of those flat spots that still remain. But as I get to the end here, it occurs to me that I don't quite know where the top is, so I decide I better clean that up so at least when it comes to putting the lip on, I know what I'm dealing with. Okay, I'm back to doing some shearing pull cuts here. I'm trying to clean up that tearout. Second pass here. And then I'm taking a look and, you know, some of it's still there, so I make the decision that I really need to decide where this lip's going to be and how deep it is, and I'll have to deal with whatever tearout comes out after that. When I selected this rough turn bowl, I really had hoped this knot would turn away, but it's really not going to, so I'm going to have to deal with it. So here I'm using some thick CA glue, and then I'm rubbing in some shavings, and then I'm going back with light CA glue and more shavings and the thin CA glue, and then finally a shot of accelerator to harden it all up. So now I'm back to trying to deal with that tearout and establish the shape of the bowl. And pull cut here, pull shear cut, and then a light push cut. And I'm getting some nice shavings from this brand new sharpened bowl gouge. I'm hoping that that's an indication that the tearout is going to be very minimal when I stop to look. So unfortunately the tearout was still there, so switched over to a negative rake scraper with a very, very fine burr sharpened on the end of it, 22.5 degrees. And that's producing some very fine shavings here. Now as I start to slide across the tool rest here, I keep hitting bumps and my scraper keeps stopping. So the CA glue, the accelerator must not have hardened at all, and I needed to clean up that tool rest. Okay, that's working much better. It's sliding across there nicely now. And here I've stopped and I'm marking up where the tearout is. I'm not going to see these pencil lines when I'm trying to turn, but it will show me later if I've created any new tearout or if I'm making progress on eliminating the tearout that was already there. As I'm going across here, the shavings are quite nice, and coming from bottom to the top is the preferred mechanism because there's supporting fibers even with the burr. And checking that still have a burr here, went back to the grinder, sharpened again, and we can see that the shavings are even finer and nicer. And boy, I like this Thompson handle. It's nice and heavy, and with the heavy scraper in there, there's very little vibration that come out. So here, working on still cleaning up some of that tearout, getting really fine shavings off this, trying to work primarily from the foot to the rim to get those supported grain to minimize that tearout. A little bit more passes here. Yeah, that's starting to look really good. I've decided the rim is too tall the way it is, or too wide, so I'm taking a couple passes here. And then I'm back to the negative rake scraper. I'm going to clean up some of that, there's some end grain tearout, and working on it here, checking that I've still got a burr, and gone back and sharpened again, and working on it. Got some real nice shavings coming off. And here I make a bad choice. I think it's good enough, and that's going to come back and bite me later. Okay, enough on the outside of this bowl. Let's pull it off and mount up our stronghold chuck, and then remount the bowl with the trued up tenon that we did, so that we can start working on the inside of this. Started with a couple peeling pull cuts here so that I wasn't trying to do a push cut into the end grain while getting bumped around by an uneven surface. Once I got it down a little bit, I went back to a push cut to kind of establish the slope I wanted to have on this. And there's a little bit of tear out there, so coming back and changed up to a 1/2 inch 45-degree gouge to try to deal with some of that. And giving a couple of shear scrapes here. So switch back to my 55-degree bowl gouge here. Going to need the 55 degrees because I want to go from top edge all the way around the bottom and clean up this rough surface. And this is one of the few times you'll see a push all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. Okay, we're back from losing our battery, and we only lost a couple of roughing passes that cleaned up the bounce in the edge of the bowl. So now we're back to our 5/8 45-degree bowl gouge, and we're just knocking down some wood here. We want to just establish an even wall thickness. We're not worried about thin yet, and now we're moving in on thin, making some cuts. Try to remain consistent. I'm watching the lower right corner of the bowl and trying to keep that cut consistent all the way down. I'm checking here, seeing how we're doing. Resharpened at this point. You can see those whisper fine shavings. Getting a little bit of vibration, so I want to stabilize that with my hand. Eliminate that. Checking to see if we're ready to go down to the next step. Yeah, it looks like we're ready to go. Gonna hog away some wood here. And we are going down in steps. We are not going all the way to the middle at this point. It's important that we try to go down in steps. Maintaining as much wood as we can in the center of the bowl reduces vibration on the section we're working on. That's why when I went back to the rim, I was getting real vibration. I've already taken away too much below the rim to work up there. And I'm looking for a consistent wall thickness here. Not worried yet about thin. I've got more wood to go, but once I establish a consistent wall thickness, then I can just watch how much I'm taking off, and as long as I go down by that, I know that I'm in good shape. Yeah, let's see if we're still consistent here. little thick on the inside, so we're going to just take half off there. Now we're getting ready to start making our passes where we're going to be moving towards the finished thickness. And decided I needed another step here, so I'm only going to go halfway. And trying to see if we've finished that, if it's the same thickness all the way along. Appears to be, but I can feel a ripple in there. So time for another negative rake scraper, this one designed for the inside of bowls, using my hand to get rid of those vibrations. Taking some fairly aggressive cuts here to get rid of the high spots. Trying to float it across the low spots, but take off the high spots. It's getting better. It's not there yet. So I'm going to mark the high spot here and draw a line so I can see it. And I'm going to try to float it over that, not pushing it in so much as I am going back and forth, trying to establish a height and then take the top off. And getting a little bit better, but you can see the line's not being consistently taken off. The bowl's starting to change shape. And at this point, can't really see it, but I can feel it. And so I'm happy with that section now, but now I'm going down the next step. Change back to my Thompson 55-degree bowl gouge here so that I can get around the bottom of the bowl without hitting the rim. And are we good all the way down? Yeah, so we're going to move in on the second from last step here. So as we come around the bottom of the bowl here, we're now cutting cross grain. And that'll produce tearout, so I'm trying to use very shallow cuts here to minimize that. And come back now that we've got a consistent thickness established, back with our scraper and try to take those ridges out. You can see them there. There is definitely some grooves, little high spots. Can't do anything about the low spots per se, but what I want to do is just float across the high spots without making the low spots any lower. Getting better. I can feel them. Yeah, it's feeling pretty good. Yeah, there's still one here. Mark that out. And so some really small ones I couldn't see anymore, but I could feel. And I'm going to cruise across those, just trying to float the tool over them, just nipping off the top. This one was a little bit bigger, and I am worrying that that bowl is changing shape. So I'm not going to push my luck here. I can clean up some of this with sanding later on the top. And so we're going to leave good enough alone and go back and finish the middle now. You can see here why I have to use the 55-degree bevel. If I was using the 45 right now, I would be hitting the rim of the bowl. I know if I come straight across the middle here and take off even cuts each time, I have no problem with going through the bottom because I've measured where that outside rim is, and I know I've got lots of meat with that tenon still. Really shallow cuts here though, because I'm cutting end grain as I come across there, so the shallower the better to reduce the tearout. Okay, I think we're done. I think we're done on the inside. So a little sanding here. I skipped the power sanding of the outside, but I did have some tearout in that rim, and I had to spend some time with some sandpaper. Having to run the lathe really slow here, so I can actually deal with the outside edge because it has changed shape. Onto Yorkshire grit here, and I apply it at 300 RPM and sand with it, and then rub it out at 500, and that's looking really nice now. So let's move on and finish the bottom of this bowl. I've gone back to my 5.5-inch vacuum chuck. or hub, and I'm going to mount the bowl up on that. I'm going to use the tailstock at first, use it just like a jam chuck, and I'm going to use it as a jam chuck while I nibble away the foot here. And when the tailstock gets in my way, that's when I'm going to engage the vacuum. So we're just doing a few peel cuts here and then a pull cut because I want to get that foot nice and even. I don't want this bowl to rock. And so now I'm on vacuum, and so I'm going to carefully take that nub off. With a 5.5-inch vacuum chuck, you've got a fair bit of suction holding it on there, so you don't have to worry too much. I measured before I turned it over to ensure I knew how much meat I had in the bottom, and I know as long as I stay above the bottom of the foot OG that I'm good, so I can take this down a fair bit. Now I'm using a negative rake scraper that's a French curve. I want to put a delicate curve in, and that's just too hard to cut with a gouge. So I'm going to use the scraper there, and then I'm going back to the 1-inch scraper, and I'm going to flatten the bottom and feather it into that French curve. And then I'm going back with the French curve here because I just want to refine that. And I've just sharpened this, so I'm just going back and just touching it ever so lightly. So with the shape of the foot established, I'm just going to go back and run through the grits here, 120, 180, 220, 320, and then I'm going to move on to Yorkshire grit here. And this is the way I apply it. With the lathe off, I rub the grit in everywhere. And then at 300 RPMs, I run the lathe as I hear the compound breaking down and it's sanding finer and finer. And then I go back up to 500 RPMs and I keep changing the cloth over until this comes back clean. Well, that looks pretty good. Let's turn the vacuum pump off and get this off. And we'll wipe it up a little bit, just get rid of any moisture that was sucked through from the vacuum. And yeah, I'm liking that. It's under a 1/4 inch thick all the way down the side, maybe even 3/16. Nice rim on it. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for joining me in the DG workshop today. Hope you come back. Yeah. Take care.